Hello, I'm Dr. Ruth Roberts, your pet's ally, and I've got some really fun guests for you all to meet today. But first, I wanted to mention a couple of things and clear up some questions for you. So we still have our Valentine's Day sale going on through today, where you can take 25% off of the original Crock-Pot diet, as well as the kidney and gut health programs. So if you've not started cooking for your pet, this is a perfect time to get started with that. So I'll put the link here to the store in the comments. And then I had a couple of folks asking questions. Sandra was asking, how do I know that my pets will like this? Because they're really super picky. And Sandra, the thing is that you can change the recipe to fit the foods that your pet will like the most. And so it is super easy to do that. You can, start with a very simple recipe and just take time to get them used to that change so that they'll have a great experience. Most pets love home-cooked food once they get exposed to it, and they're like, I ain't going back to the bag. So Diane was also asking about if this is the same thing that I used in practice at Sundawn Cat Moon. And Diane, it is, the basics are similar, but I've added a ton of different recipes, including keto versions, and recipes with beans, without beans. And I am no longer associated with Sundawn Cat Moon, so I'm not quite sure what they're doing there. But that's the thing is with the Crock-Pot diet is that I'm able to continue to support people with the weekly private broadcasts we've got. And then Judy and Angela were asking about holistic total body support and where is it, when is it. It will be back in stock mid-April, but if you're a current customer, we do have some jars of the cat product left, which can be used for dogs as well. So just email us at drruthroberts@drruthroberts.com, and Jake will get you some information on how we can get you some jars to kind of tide you over, if you will. So what I wanted to talk with you all about today, and before I bring on my guest Tonya Tysee, who's a client and become a friend, and we've kind of are working on the same page, I think. Early in practice, I saw families that had their third dog with lymphoma, their second dog with heart disease, and over through my practice career, which is over 30 years at this point, I've had pet parents say to me, of course my baby has fill-in-the-blank disease, I have it too. And I've told my own story about Esau, our English setter, who I love dearly and just was a total comedian, who developed, as we were making the decision that, okay, we need to leave Charleston because physically and health-wise I can't handle the humidity anymore. It made all of my stuff get worse. He developed vestibular syndrome, which is kind of like they call it old dog vestibular syndrome, and it's kind of similar to vertigo in people, and then developed canine cognitive disease after my own diagnosis of mild cognitive impairment. And so Esau, God bless him, he made it so simple for me and so clear of what was going on, and I thanked him profoundly for taking that burden for me. But he made it clear as a bell, too, when he was ready to go. So what's up with that? I've come to believe that our pets gladly take on our burden of disease to give us the breathing room to learn whatever it is we need to learn from that discomfort and to move ourselves forward. So with me today is Tonya Tysee, and Tonya was, as I said, a client first. We worked together with her old lady Bella, and who's gone on to her great reward. So welcome, Tonya, and so delighted to see you. You're welcome. And you've had a really interesting journey. You've had a spiritual awakening. So kind of give us the rundown on what you've been through and what you've experienced.
Regarding Bella or regarding
life in general, the universe and everything.
Life in general. Well, my journey started probably about 6.5 years ago when I was kind of at a phase in my life where I knew I was supposed to be doing something more powerful, but just wasn't getting where I wanted to go. And I was very aware. I've always been very aware of in my life that I've had fears and wanted to overcome those, but it wasn't really quite sure how to do that until the universe provided an opportunity for me to move through those fears through what was labeled at the time as a Kundalini awakening. There are probably many words for it around the world, but that was the way it was labeled for me then, and it was pretty intense. But what I can say about that intensity was that it was necessary in order for me to move past when I needed to move past. It then gave me some great gifts and being able to go to a very specific yoga training through Amrit Yoga Institute at a training that's called I Am Yoga, which is the ancient teachings of yoga. And that is where I then learned how to manage the mind, which is where our fears come from. And that it was just profound. It changed everything I looked at in the world. It was completely shifted everything. And then, of course, a couple years later, I was guided to do the Reiki training. And that kind of just went into one thing to the next. And I'm now having a business in Reiki where I work with animals and also people. And it's been very rewarding.
And that's just amazing. It's astonishing. And you got the message really early on as a groomer even. You were realizing that you had to, because as you said, so many pets are like, I do not want to be doing this. But so you had to learn how to modulate your energy to match theirs and help bring the fear level down. And that's just so wise. We see so many people in work with animals from 20, 30 years ago that just were all about the Brutacane method of restraint. And that's just so primitive.
Well, and I'll tell you just briefly, my experience with grooming was my first awareness of energy and how we work off each other's energy. And the great thing about animals is that they're honest.
Yes.
They're not going to hide their emotions. They're not led by ego. So when a dog is in fear or if it's not happy with what I'm doing on the table, it will let me know. And if I don't listen, it will really let me know by possibly injuring me through biting me or so forth. So, that was very valuable in order to stay safe. In working with animals, you have to be present with them. And that's where you have to decide if you have a dog that is in a certain level of fear, how do I approach this dog? Do I use more assertive energy or do I slow down how I work with him and give it some time and let it just spend 20 minutes with it before I even start working on him, getting to know it and building a trust before we start doing what we need to do. So that was absolutely fascinating work for me. And I've unfortunately, I received a back injury from being knocked down by a dog, which actually was also what led me to my yoga practice. So there are no accidents.
No, there aren't. Everything shows up for a reason. Sometimes we don't like it at the time, but true. It's there. Yeah, that's amazing. So we talked about a lot of things when we were working with Bella, and one of the things is sort of I'm venturing out of the doctor space and into, okay, let's really just talk about what's going on here energetically with these guys. So we talked a lot about how our emotions impact our pets and how they support us emotionally during difficult times. And, we talked a lot about that with Bella, but what are some of the experiences you've had with your own clients and even before you were doing this work, as far as seeing how pets were supporting their people or feeling the support from your own pet?
Yeah, what I have found to be very interesting with the clients that I've worked with, specifically with animals, dogs in particular, I'm thinking of one occasion where, just sitting and discussing what is the behavioral issue, and then at some point the owner usually starts in with, how they're feeling about it. Are they feeling guilty? about what has happened, or they're lost, they don't know what to do, or they're in fear because maybe it's two dogs fighting now and they never have before, and now we have to keep them separated. So as we have these conversations, it's been really interesting to watch as we shift into different conversations, how the dog is reacting. Because when I'm talking to these folks, I'm also watching the dog at the same time. What is the dog doing as we are talking about these issues? Because when the folks will start from a place of fear and they're talking about what's going on, and I can't live this way anymore, and it's not right for the dog, but I don't know what to do, the dog will respond in different ways. So they're always responding to our energy, even in our conversations. What's been really interesting is on a couple occasions with another dog trainer that I work with, where when we start talking about our own personal vulnerabilities, the dog oftentimes, not every time, but oftentimes will come and join us.
Yeah.
And lay down in front of us.
Right on.
And so this is part of what I explain to owners, so that they're experiencing at the same time with the animal of, well, look what your dog just did when you said that. And they get to experience it firsthand, because we can talk about energy, and I can talk about Reiki and energy for hours, but if you don't experience it, it's very hard to understand. So I think a lot of it is very experiential. When you see what's going on, and I'm helping people kind of read the animals and see what's going on, then they're able to kind of grasp, wow, my energy really does create something here in this dynamic that also the animal may be responding to.
Right on. Yeah, and that's the thing, is that I think with the advent of social media, it's both a blessing and a curse. We have so much more connectedness to the world, but it's also unfortunately encouraged us to be very rude and selfish and basically vomit whatever emotional garbage we're dealing with at the moment all over everybody, which is just very inappropriate. So it's so amazing that you're seeing this with animals when people say, oh, well, yeah, I am worried about this, or, oh, they start to disclose something to you about some event in their life. I had the experience of this fellow that was 84, and this is 20 years ago, so my guess is that he's no longer with us on this part of the world. But we were talking about his dog and growing up in Charlotte, North Carolina, and he went on to tell me about his father abusing him and the day that he told his father to stop. And so the story comes out of his man, and here is his little dog who's just, has Cushing's disease and is really sick, and his wife is sick, and his, life is really not very happy for this fellow. The dog just looked at him adoringly the whole time. And he told the story, and he looked at the dog, and he looked at me and said, I've never told anybody that before. But he got that out, and also how he saved himself. He said, no more. So amazing. It is amazing, and that's one of the things that animals can do for us. They can help us feel secure enough to let that most horrible story out and put it into the air and let it go off into the ether, if you will. So it's wonderful that you're seeing that and helping people get that lesson too. And when you and I were talking too, we were talking about taking responsibility for our emotions, and you were telling me, oh, well, Bella doesn't really like to receive Reiki from me. And so I was like, well, why do you think that is? And so what happened after that for you?
Yeah, it was just kind of a flippant comment as well. And I always found it very interesting. But what I realized is that this is something I teach, and still I was blind to it because, when you are so connected and, to your dog, your own dog, it's easier to see other situations outside of, in other families. But I found myself saying, Bella really doesn't like to receive, Reiki. I said, I'll put my hand on her and then start calling in the symbols. And the moment I do that, she gets up and walks away. Well, silly me, that was her way of saying, no, Mom, don't care for that. Thanks. So when you said, well, that may be work for you to do, Tonya, and I got off the phone with you and I thought, oh my gosh, I said, that it was so obvious and it was right in front of me, and I didn't acknowledge it because I was working from a place of fear. Because one of my fears over the years has been losing her.
Yeah.
And I think I know many people who have the same fear. In fact, one of the reasons why I set the intention when we had our session together, one of the first things I mentioned to you was that my intention is not to prolong her life, but give her quality of life.
Right.
And I said, even if it shortens her life, I said, because there were a couple dogs that I had groomed as a groomer that were suffering. They were gone.
And yes.
And it really disturbed me. And I made the promise to myself then that I would never do that to my own dog. So when you said that, you also gave me a wonderful exercise to do, which I did, and it revealed a lot of things that I needed to learn at that moment. And what our connection and the work that we did, I believe, was to help me in letting her go. And by putting her on the right diet to make her comfortable, and I took her off her heart medication, which I had realized she was having an allergic reaction to. I thought, I'm just going to let things happen naturally. And she was very comfortable. And then the night before we let her go, she crashed and her body was telling me that it was shutting down. But she wasn't in pain. She wasn't suffering. And it was beautiful. And I'm just so thankful that I had someone outside of me hold me accountable and bring into my awareness that was exactly what I was doing, was that I was working from a place of fear, because most of us do when it comes to making important decisions on letting things that we love go.
That is the absolute truth. I mean, because if after 30 years of dealing with death on an almost daily basis, I have a very different view of it from most people. But that is the absolute truth. If we hold it all in fear, then it is scary. If we take a deep breath and acknowledge the fear and give it a minute to, do all its weird stuff that it's going to do to us, and then say, this is what I need to do to help my pet, or my mother or my loved one to ease through.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it just is... It is so scary, but so important because we can make that transition to whatever it is we all go to next, beautiful and peaceful, and learn something in the process. I learned more about my father's life when he was very close to dying and was sort of babbling on about things in his childhood, and that allowed me to understand a great deal about his fears and his difficulties and challenges in life as an adult. So it can be a profound teaching lesson. And that's kind of the other big thing. I feel like, many of our pets, they're here because we love them and they're great companions, but they really are here to help us learn the lesson. So I give the example of Mona. Yes. I mean, Mona's our little 15-year-old dachshund. And she is here to show me when I am screwing up. She is this mirror, and she's like, how do you like this? Like this now?
Yep.
And so I'll get infuriated at her because she will eat things like, it's like, how did you even think this was a good idea? She has literally eaten a shattered glass jar covered with bacon grease before and lived to tell the story. So, I'll look at her and say, why are you hurting yourself? And that's, it's like, oh, damn it. That's me.
Right.
So that's, and I think you've seen the same thing often, certainly with Bella and often with your clients as well. They're like, here's the mirror. Are you looking? Are you looking?
Yeah. And not just animals, but our partners, our family can all be mirrors for us. But animals, I find, even though it depends on, I guess, how you view an animal's intellectual nature, but they're, I believe, to be much more evolved than we are because they know how to stay in the moment.
Yes.
Much better than we do.
Yes.
And as I mentioned before, they're honest.
Yes.
And so pay attention because that is such an amazing gift to have that there, and it's only there to help you. It's not there to hurt you. Even though these situations like eating glass jars may be very frustrating and have a hefty vet bill, but pay attention, because it's trying to reveal something to you. And if I wish, I hope and I wish for people to have that kind of awareness, because it is there to help you.
Yes, it is. And that's so I've been talking for a couple of years now about sitting down, just if you call it meditation, sometimes that's off-putting for people because they think it has to be a really big deal. But sitting down and just for 3 minutes a day, just to start to be quiet and be serene and just be present, stroking your pet, just telling them verbally or non-verbally how much you love them, and just being present for those few minutes a day. It is so powerful for both of you. Yeah, great. Well, Tonya, I've had a great time talking with you again. Anything else you would like folks to know about what you do that I haven't drawn out successfully?
Well, my business is Palmetto Animal Reiki. I can also be found on Palmetto Reiki. I work with both animals and people. In fact, lately I've been working with more people. If you feel called to just have someone bank off whatever's going on in your life, you feel stuck, part of my service is to help you get unstuck, and let's look at whatever fears that may be blocking your progress. There's also, I follow up with references and additional books and videos that will help you after your session. And I check in from time to time, so your support doesn't end at the end of the session. If I'm intuitively guided to send you something outside of it, it's just part of what I do, and it's there to, because it takes a village.
Amen.
And, I'm just here to help people do the same work that I've done, that I have found to be so liberating. And I love where I am in my life right now.
Beautiful. So. And for many of you, a lot of us assume that, we have to be face to face with this practitioner, but in truth,
no, you don't.
Yeah, this is it. This is energy work, and this is the beautiful thing. So
I can send it to Australia if I needed to.
Amen.
And I have.
Right on. Cool. Yeah. Well, listen, thank you so much for coming on today. So I've got a link to Tonya's website over in the comments, and it'll be up at the top of the listing on the YouTube page, so you'll be able to find that easily. Again,
well, thanks for having me, Ruth.
My pleasure. Many thanks.
Yes.
Take good care.
Take care.
And I'm Dr. Ruth Roberts, your pet's ally. Thanks.